This podcast contains excerpts from New Soul Radio shows. For the full listening experience with music, visit newsoulradio.com. That's NUSOL radio.com. This is Soul Say.
The following thoughts and opinions do not represent New Soul Radio, Soul Say and Company, or any of our affiliates, advertisers, or sponsors.
You're listening to Gems and Gems with Kim Brio on newsoulradio.com.
WSOL New Soul Radio. This is Kim Brio, and you are listening to Gems and Jams. Thank you so much for being here this week. This last show that we had with Whit Devereaux, we got amazing feedback. So I am very excited to continue to bring you content that makes you think and makes you grow. Now, before we hop into our content, you guys, I just want to pause and say thank you to every single person who is listening right now, every single person who has shared a flyer, shared a social media post, downloaded the app, anything. Guys, we are officially in Germany. We're officially added to, of course, you know, we have France and Netherlands before. We've got Japan, we've got Bangladesh, we've got Sri Lanka, we've got Kuwait. We've got quite a few new locations that it blows my mind that we're even being heard there. So I just want to do a quick shout out to anyone who has taken the time to share the station, share any of the shows. Also, quick announcement, all of your New Soul shows are now podcasts. So once the show airs live and you hear it with the music, a few days after that, it will be added to your popular podcast platforms. That's iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. without the music, guys. So it's important to know if you enjoy this vibe, the full experience with the music, you can only get that on air with the radio. So make sure you catch us live. But if you want to catch the interviews, those will be uploaded as podcasts, you guys. So go right now and follow Dr. Shirlyn Speaks and Life Gems with Kim Brio on your popular podcast platforms. Okay, so guys, it's Thursday. So you already know what that means. Who could I possibly have on my show on Thursday? I don't know. Who could I have? I think it might be Dr. Garrett. I think it might be.
I think it might be too, Kim. It's me. Hey guys, I'm back.
Welcome back, Dr. Garrett. Thank you so much. As you guys know, it's Thursday. So my resident guest is Dr. Shirlyn Garrett. And today we are going to be continuing a conversation that we had on another episode, The Truth About Violence, but we have a little bit of a surprise. So I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Garrett to share the surprise with you guys.
Yes. So guys, I wanted to continue our conversation that we were having. And I thought, who better to do that than my little brother? And so his name is Derron Strickland, and he has so many roles. And I wanted to talk to you about a few of them. He is finishing up his PhD. He is alumni of Chicago State University, which is how we met. He's also a minister, an author, and more importantly, he's my friend. He's done a lot of work in Chicago public school systems, and I just think he would be a perfect fit to what we're talking about at this moment and how to work with the youth, because he's done that and done that well. So I want you guys to welcome him, and let's listen to this rest of this conversation being played out for someone who is actually doing the work.
Wow, that's amazing.
Say hey to the people. Welcome. You just got a big old intro. You just gonna say hey.
Man, it's amazing. Whenever I'm introduced and people talk about the things I'm doing, all I can say is to God be the glory. Like it's nothing I did. It's Him having to choose me and put me in position where I have the voice, where I have the knowledge, and then more importantly, the people who believe in me that push me out in front, so I can try to hide like I do often. I thank Dr. Garrett for just everything she's done, and she knows this. I say it all the time. I call her Big Sis. She get on my nerve. I'll call her by her first name, but she's always, just number one for me. So I appreciate you, Dr. Garrett. And thank you, Kim, for having me.
No problem. Thank you for being here. And Dr. Garrett has a way of knowing the people in her circle who who this is a perfect fit for. And she will nicely and gently and politely put a little fire under your butt and say, you're going to be here at this time and do this, okay?
That's my sweet Southern girl voice.
Exactly. Thank you, Dr. Garrett, for what you do for all of us, because you are a light and you are a motivation. You are a mentor to so many of us. You are a mentor and a friend. And it's very hard to find someone who plays both of those roles. So I want to thank you, Dr. Garrett, since he started the conversation.
Thank you so much. And thank you to Derron.
So y'all, what we're going to do, we're going to hop in now. We had an episode a few weeks ago, Dr. Garrett,
yes.
Where we talked about the truth about violence. And what we really did was we dug in and talked about why and how we kind of got to the position that we were in. And by the end of the episode, we really got to digging in and understanding that a lot of our youth don't have hope. They have no hope. They see no future. They see no opportunities. Therefore, we get a lot of the violence that we kind of have out here now. So fast forward to, was that yesterday, the day before yesterday, whichever, when Dr. Garrett introduced me to Derron, and I said, well, sir, what do you do? And he gets to talking, and I was like, oh, we have to continue this conversation with him. So what I did, Derron, I asked you to listen to the first episode, which you said that you had. I just kind of want to, before we pick up and go into this episode and continue the conversation, kind of get your professional stance on the things that were discussed in that previous episode and the things that stuck out to you that you want to expound on today.
Oh, man. Thank you, Kim. One of the major things that stuck out, and from working around Dr. Garrett all these years, their childhood adverse effects. Like, people do not believe that things from their past are still playing out. And it's not even in the lines of psychoanalytics or anything like that, but just the fact that we don't forget. We just don't forget. And as much as we try to push things out, we often communicate from a place of where we are. And so as we elevate in our lives and we get these professional titles, there's a part of us that still remember being that little boy on 81st and Marshfield, or being that little boy at Julian. Shouts out to Julian, on my Jaguars out there. But you think about that movie ATL with T.I., right? And I forget the gentleman's name, but it was Nunu's dad. I can't think of his professional name. But he came from Bankhead, the same neighborhood, all in that. Now he's at the tennis, country club playing tennis. And the gentleman had reminded him, man, you forgot where you came from.
Yeah, he was like Mr. Garnett. That was his name.
Right, Mr. Garnett, that's
came from.
Yeah, he reminded him, and that it reminded him, don't forget where you're coming from while you're pushing forward. And something that you guys were talking about as far as being able to reach back and pull people forward. Right. I'm a member of Omega Psi Phi, and there's a dance we do called Q Come Here, where the brother in front of me reaches back to pull me into the line so I can start to hop with them. And it put me right in that same frame of mind that Dr. Garrett reached back for me in 2015 and have pulled me along the way, and now it's pushing me out in front. So guess what I can do? I can reach back and steady pull. And so when you start talking about that lens, and I'm glad you guys talked about that, like how we see that thing. Beck talked about what we see is it affects what we think, and what we think affects how we feel, and what we feel affects how we behave. And so when you start talking about that hopelessness, and if I'm in hopelessness and that's all I see, that's all I think, that's all I feel, that's all I do, and it's learned, and then it's passed on to my brother or my sister, because I got it from my mom or I got it from my environment. And it's just perpetuated through the generations over and over again. When y'all was talking about that, I said, y'all hit it right on the head, that we're not teaching how to have hope, but we're teaching how to have hopelessness.
Exactly.
I tease about in the 90s, like I remember early 90s, when at Julian, they was talking to all the young ladies about going to college. And Dr. Garrett said this last week that, or in that episode, that there are more Black women with advanced degrees and leading these companies. And I thought about back to Julian when they didn't even talk to the guys. They were pushing all the Black girls, go to college, go to college, go to college. They was telling us Black men who was smart enough to go, oh yeah, y'all definitely go. Y'all definitely go. But it was this grab and pull toward the Black young ladies. Mm-hmm. And now you're looking at 24, 25, 30 years later, advanced degrees, doctorates, judges, lawyers, principals, superintendents. And people say, there are no men up here. I wonder what happened. And I think about that time, that there was a time that they were pushing and they forgot to grab the brothers too.
So
And
Derron, let me ask you this question. Let me jump in for a sec.
yeah,
Why do you feel like that they back then they didn't push the black men and that they grabbed onto the girls and left you guys back? Why is that?
man, I had to take a pause for a minute because part of me feel like this is a spiritual thing. Part of me feel like it was a trick of the devil to separate or put against the black woman versus the black man.
Mm-hmm.
And the world played it out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my personal spiritual belief about that matter. Well, you go back in just history and you look at how women had to fight to get to where they are, to be treated as an equal. And it's still a problem to this day.
Absolutely.
I mean, you got the CEOs and they're still fighting with their CEO counterparts to be accepted as equal, as though they're not as educated or as talented, like they don't deserve to be there. And this is men doing it to women. Absolutely. And now I'm starting to see women do it to other women.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I just feel that's all it is, from a spiritual lens that you see on TV, and you guys talked about this in your last episode, that the black male is with the white woman or the black sister is with the white man, but we can't show two successful African-American or black people together. When I was growing up, my version of love was the Cosby Show because I saw a successful black man and a successful black woman raising their 5 kids being successful. And then, it rolled over to Different World and all that. So that's just what I feel. And when I sit back and now that, I started late with my academic career because I was in the Air Force and I had kids young. So I was being a daddy first. And so now that I'm here and I'm trying to get to that level, I'm starting to see how people use my age or use the fact that I started school late or that I don't have that degree yet. It's almost like there's an academic hazing that's happening out here. Professional hazing, like, oh, you haven't paid these dues. You're old enough, but you haven't paid the dues to be in there. You have the degree, but you haven't been here long enough. So I just think there is that generational thing as well. And I don't want to say it's a curse, but and the proper word escapes me, but I just think there was a setup from Jump Street that there was a place in the world they wanted to put the woman versus the man versus the woman.
So we talked about that as well, and we continue to talk about that. Even the show before, when we talked about intergenerational traumas, I know that we've discussed this because we talked about the black man and black women were split apart on purpose, and what it's done to the family, that we don't have that family anymore, the sense of family that we've had previously, we lost that. And the same thing goes with how they have that it's not what it used to be. We don't have the same sense of generational, even generational wealth being passed on from one to another. We don't have that same sense of the elders and elders being able to tell kids things. I told Kim when I grew up that the elders on the block could get me. And then when I got home, they had already called home and let my parents know that I had been doing something I shouldn't be. And then they got me. We don't have that anymore.
We don't have a sense of community anymore.
Grandma's are 40 years old now.
Yeah. And another thing that I really pulled out of what you just said, Derron, that escapes the gender role thing is the classism thing.
Absolutely.
And this bourgeois class thing with black people, where we now have a certain group of our minorities within our minority that look down on our other groups of minorities. And it's perfect that you said that, because as I thought about why I wanted to have this conversation today, you just pinpointed what it was. And what I want to do is tell the bourgeois blacks how to treat the blacks that you don't deem necessarily worthy. That's what I want to talk about. So as we talk about this conversation, and we're going to go to a break in a hot second, but I want you guys to stew over this as we play the music and go to the break. I want you to stew over, Derron, you say you're a member of Omega Psi-Phi. I'm a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha. Dr. Shirlyn Garrett is a doctor. Okay. So I think that trumps all of this. So my point in saying is you're on the line and you're listening to 3 quote unquote more established African Americans, right? I want to talk to our fellow counterparts on how to interact with the young men outside of the urban environments that we're going to when you're leaving your university and you're at the gas station and you're at Walgreens, that unconscious bias that you have that is continuing to victimize them. I want to talk to us about how we should interact with our community for community growth. Does that make sense, y'all?
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed.
All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to pause for a hot second. I'm going to go, first of all, pay a few bills so we can keep having these conversations. We're going to play a little bit of music, and then we will be right back. You are, of course, listening to Gems and Jams Radio with Kim Brio on Thursday. So with special guest Dr. Shirlyn Garrett and Derron Strickland on WSOL New Soul Radio. Supporters of this show can join us on Patreon, where for only $5 a month, you can access all past shows and exclusive content. Join now at patreon.com/SoulSayCo. That's patreon.com/SOLSEICO. Want to answer one of our questions or have a song or artist request? Or do you just want to leave us some feedback? Call the New Soul Radio voicemail at 312-945-6376. That's 312-945-6376. Remember, we may play your message on air. WSOL New Soul Radio. This is Kim Brio, and of course, you are listening to Gems and Jams, Life Gems and Feel Good Jams. It's Thursday, so I'm here with Dr. Shirlyn Garrett as usual. Say hey to the people, girl.
Hey, y'all.
And we have a special guest today, Derron Strickland. Speak to the people.
Hey, y'all. How y'all doing?
Listen, it's always exciting when we have men on here because it's usually just me and Dr. Shirlyn on here, like being women and cackling. So every time I hear a masculine voice, I'll be like, oh my God, it's testosterone. Thank you for coming, y'all. We have been having a fun time, even in the break, in the midst of everything. So, guys, we have been discussing This is the Truth About Violence, Part 2. Dr. Shirlyn Garrett and I already did do an episode on this where we kind of discussed this, and we even went over it at the beginning of this episode. If you have not listened to that episode, you can listen to it on iHeartRadio, Spotify, or what's the other one? Apple Podcasts. There we go. Mm-hmm. You can listen to it there. You will just search The Truth About Violence with Kim Brio and Dr. Shirlyn Garrett. We're on to Part 2. And what we were really discussing before we went to break, what I posed to my beautiful counterparts was, I wanted to jump into this classism thing within the Black community, right? Because we're always talking about how our young Black men and women, or our urban community, et cetera, is looked at a certain way by outsiders. But y'all, let's just be real and talk about our own community. This is a conversation for us to better our community within our community today. And what I wanted to talk about was our bougie Black folks like ourselves, y'all. And I'm not dissing y'all, because let me be clear with the definition of bougie that I'm using, all three of us on this here conversation fit into that. First of all, a Black doctor, ... hello. 2 Black Greek letter organization members. We fit into kind of that bourgeois Black thing that I'm kind of talking about. Now, y'all, as I'm talking to you, I'm going to paint a picture. Let me paint a picture. Think about your professional colleagues, your professional friends, your frat brothers, for you, Derron, definitely my sorority sisters, because, you know, we bougie, right? We go to the gas station on 63rd and whatever, on 95th and whatever, and we treat our young Black men the same, if not worse, as the counterparts that we discuss, that being Caucasians, etc. Right? We hide in our purse. We're snarling. We're ignoring them when they speak to us. All of those things. Let's just keep it real, y'all. We're gonna keep it a buck. We're gonna keep it 100, right? Now, if we zoom out of that and we talk about how and why they got to where they are, they're in a place of hopelessness already. They're already there. They're in a place of there's no way out for me. And here your bougie Black self at the gas station, not giving them no hope, saying, yes, peasant, you will never be where I am. So what I want to do is have this conversation with our Black people and get real about how we need to interact with the community at large, the community as a whole, the parts of the Black community that you don't necessarily want to acknowledge, that you don't necessarily kick it with, that do not go on Jamaican vacations with you. I want to talk about how we interact with them and how we can actually make it better versus downplaying, talking about, saying that you had these opportunities that you didn't take, etc. Does that make sense to y'all?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to let I'm going to throw the baton out there, and whoever takes it first can grab it. And I want some insight on this and your opinion on, first of all, why we operate like this and how we can change it.
Well, I want to definitely jump on this one real quick. But I got to start right here with God has not given me the spirit of fear, but of power and love and sound mind. I got to start right there because, it's funny how what fear does to you. Fear will give you a bouginess, right? And make you try to look down at people, or it can actually put you in a place of, I'm scared of people. And so I'm not standing on the power that God has given me, not on the strength that he has given me. I think about Ecclesiastics. It says that all this stuff is vanity anyway. Like, it don't matter about this money, this Audi I drive, whatever I think I am. And so that bourgeoisness that people come with, it's crazy how they avoid certain neighborhoods on purpose. I remember back in the day, I grew up on 81st and Marshfield, and me hearing Country Club Hills. Matter of fact, let me even come closer. Beverly, right here on 95th, going to the plaza, because there was a time my mother used to make me get dressed up in my Easter clothes to go to the plaza before it closed, and what it was before it closed, before Ford City opened up and took over. But like, I think about just going to that neighborhood, the representation that my mother told me, you represent my house when I walk outside the door. And so it was a yes, ma'ams. It was a no, ma'ams. And let truth be told, I was terrified to talk to anybody white just because of what they told me white people do to people. And come to find out, me going to Texas for my 8th grade year of school and being in a diverse community and then coming back to Chicago, it taught me so many lessons.
Absolutely.
It taught me you can't be bougie, because guess what? Black folk treat you like stuck-up white folk do.
There you go.
Right.
That's it. That's the pen right there.
And so I don't know if it's that we aspire to be white or have what white folk have. And so that's why brothers and sisters take on this bougie airness of themselves. Mm-hmm. But or maybe they grew up with that class, that spoon. And so it's just this thing that it's a mindset. But you just one decision away from being broke or being homeless.
And I think that's important that you say that. So let me get this part, because I grew up in Texas and I moved to Chicago. So I grew up around every race. And so for me, it wasn't this big thing to be talking to people of different races because I grew up right next to them. I was in school with them. So it wasn't that big thing for me. But I promise you, in the last week, I know that I have been called bougie at least 5 times by 5 different people. And I was like, well, if that's what you think,
you bougie.
And I'm probably the most down to earth bougie people.
Exactly. I was one of the people.
And yes, you were, but I ignored yours, but these were from other people. And I was just like, but I'm down to earth. I said, people are intimidated by who they think that you are. I said, it's not what I give off. I don't give that off. People think that that's me because of the title. And do I feel like I earned that title? Heck yeah, I earned it. I did. And I went through. But the thing is, they are the people that are placing the energy on that, not me. My energy is down to earth. If you come to Shirlyn's house, I'm going to be the person that has that Southern hospitality that I was raised with. I'm going to be gracious. I'm going to be all those things that my parents taught me to be. You have the issue with the title, not me.
Well, here's the thing, y'all. If we're going to keep it real, right? In our community, I think before we even jump in here, we have to tackle the obvious in the room, right? In our community, we are told to be and aspire to 2 different things, right? Mm-hmm. We are told to aspire to those characteristics that equal up to what, quote unquote, being bougie is called, right? Mm-hmm. But then when we acquire those things, when we do go to school, when we do get the degrees, when we do get the money, when we do get those things, it's our same community that's like, oh, now you done flipped on us.
Exactly.
You done changed on us.
Exactly.
You're now bougie. And I think that this conversation, especially this particular part of the conversation, y'all, I really want us to start having conversations about our interactions with each other within the Black community. Because before we can even be concerned about what another race thinks about us or how they treat us, we got to get our own stuff together. And we're literally telling each other all of these different things, contradicting things, mind you, at the same time. We are telling young Black men, go to college, pledge a frat, go be a lawyer, go be a doctor, go do this. But then we're also telling these same young Black men, when they do go to college or when they do buy their first property and it's not in the hood and it's in Country Club Hills, then we have something negative to say to them.
And you still tell them you ain't good enough.
We still telling them, even though you went and did everything I said you should do, you're the goal, right? Now, because you're the goal, now I got a problem with you.
Well, let me jump on that real quick. Social cultural influences, man, it'll tear you up. What you think is acceptable. I mean, you can move to the suburbs and somebody will tell you, oh, you supposed to brought your money back to the hood to make the hood better.
Absolutely.
So no matter what you do, it seems like there's a catch-22 to this thing. If you're outside the community, they gonna say you ain't Black enough, or you ain't in touch enough, or you ain't real enough. If you in the community, you almost living in fear because people don't want you to have nice things, like you don't deserve it. Or it's their fault that you successful, or it's your fault that
or you stupid for having it and staying over here.
Right. So there's that thing, but social cultural influences, and it's not even them talking to your stuff, it's them talking to your money, not even your titles, because it seems like what money gives you the status that you need. Because there's rich people that tell you they got money and their money is new money to people who got old money. And they still are going through the same things that we going through, who trying to get money or get the titles. But those social cultural influences, when you start talking about what we put in front of our kids, I remember asking a group of students at John Hope, I want y'all to write down people y'all deem successful. Nobody in that group wrote down their teachers. They wrote down Wayne, Braun, D. Wade. They was naming all these people who have money. They didn't talk about the people who got degrees that are licensed and certified to come in and try to help you become what you want to be. And it tripped me out, but I did it on purpose because I was trying to show them, look, y'all may be shooting past something, or maybe that's not what God got for y'all. And I hate to even say that out loud. Maybe he got for you to be that police officer that's going to make a difference in the community, or you go be that teacher that inspires the next generation, or you go be the entrepreneur that comes up with something so clever that I'm going to buy it. I need that. Right. So, this money thing, this ideal and image of money, that it takes us where we want to go. Yes, true. But it will also help you forget who you are and who you're supposed to be and how you should use your money. I mean, I think about these NBA athletes. They talk about these guys making $40 million every year. And I'm like, what do I do with that much money? Well, I wouldn't even know what to do with a cool million besides tithe. I'm going to give it to hey, God got to get his 10%. That's the first thing I think about. Because I have children, I'm like, yo, y'all want to go back to college? I got a college graduate, a daughter working her way through, and the son in the name. Like, do y'all want to go? Let me put some money up for y'all. But the rest of it, I don't know what I'm going to do with all that money every year. Yeah. Like, I can't even think about, honestly, I can't think about it. I'm like, man, look at my credit report to make sure I paid all these things off.
And I'm so glad this conversation went in this direction, because even though we're not specifically talking about violence right now, what we're talking about is the path to the answer. Because I'm going to rephrase this question then. I was saying, how do we not treat them differently? How do we within the community begin to mold and bend and mend our relationships between the classes? How do we do that? How do we begin in the Black community to not have a this versus this? Because at the end of the day, we can kind of tie violence down to that. That's the reality of it. Because even if you think about the young men who are going and carjacking, This is a money thing. This is not a they want to hurt somebody thing. This is not a violence thing. Again, it ties to the money. So how do we begin to mend the relationship between the Black classes when the Black classes haven't even come to an understanding that the relationship needs to be mended?
And I think part of that for me, I can just speak professionally, has always been to reach back and to help people that look like me. It was really important to me to teach at a predominantly African-American university. I definitely know that this degree that I worked on so diligently was not just for me. My ancestors pushed me there. And so I recognize that it's important that I give back in the way that I do. To work in foster care, where predominantly African-American children are a part of the foster care system, to give back in that way, to do the things that people didn't know I was doing. I didn't want to be up front outside where people could see me. I'm behind the scenes to do what I need to do. Now I've come from behind the scenes, and I'm talking about the issues that people need to be aware of, that people need to champion and challenge themselves to even think differently about. My church is in the community on 87th. And I go to that church predominantly because I like the message that we're receiving, but also it helps in the community. And so those are the things. I'm not fearful. I've lived on 83rd and Walcott. And so I lived there for 15 years. When I moved here, I had to learn about Chicago. But my point is that doing the things that are necessary to bridge that gap, working in Inglewood, working in wherever people are fearful, because those people are my people. Those people are just like me. And so while you might think something of me, I think so much more of you. And so those are the reasons why that for me, it's important to have these conversations. So they see me you see me as just like you, not just because I'm the doctor, not just because that's what you think I am just like you. And if you see that I'm just like you, you can become anything you want to be, because I did.
That's so huge. Bridging the gap and taking personal accountability for bridging the gap. We can't look at it as a whole community bridging the gap if you don't take personal accountability for bridging the gap in the ways and the relationships that are around you.
Absolutely.
I think about the golden rule, treating others like you want to be treated. So that's where it starts for me. Like, I can never get too big on myself, because I remember when I was just this skinny kid on the block going to O'Hareland Park right there off 83rd and Wood and wanting to be something. I looked up to the guys in the neighborhood who was the dope boys. And it's not because of the life. It was just, they were just cool. Like, everybody knew them and everybody wanted to talk to them, and they was accepted. And as a young man, that's what I wanted. I wanted to be accepted. I didn't grow up with my father. I met him once when I was 12, and then again 29, and we had 11 years together before he passed away. But God put positive Black men around me to make sure I stayed the course that he had for my life. He gave me what we call in psychology and sociology social fathers. So even though they wasn't my own blood, I had my Uncle Alex, I had my Uncle Ben, my Uncle Larry, shout out to them. But he put other men like Pastor Michael Jones at Greater Rock of Ages Missionary Baptist Church. He put Jeff Epstein, who came over to our church and became like my dad, just this man I can look up to. And they pushed me toward education. They pushed me toward the church. And so when you start talking about how do we interact with those people, we got to remember that it was people who pushed us to where we are. Nobody gets to where they're going by themselves. There was always a teacher or somebody that told you something that lit a fire under you that got you to where you at. And so when I think about dealing with some of these difficult youth, because I work with DCFS, well, I should say Aunt Martha's technically, and I run meetings for youth who are about to emancipate. So I work with the 18, the 19, the 20-year-olds. And the one thing I try to tell them is, if you want me to treat you like an adult, act like an adult. But I had to think about something. We tell kids to be kids so much that when they become adults, what they know how to do is be a kid. We don't take time to train them to be adults, because when they turn 18 or when they turn 21, whatever age we think they're supposed to be mature enough to make decisions, they still have a child mindset, because we haven't took time to train them and prepare them for a world that's waiting on them as an adult. And so somewhere, and for me, Dr. Garrett knows this, for me, it's all about how we were taught. So when you look at what people do, you got to look at how they were taught. If you look at how they speak, how did you learn how to speak? Where did you get this from? Because again, we communicate from a place of where we are. And if what we have is a childhood mindset, that's what we go speak from. If we have a violence-based mindset, that's what we're going to do. So for me, it's always, we got to draw a line of respect. What's going on, doctor? How you doing? Good afternoon, baby. How you doing? I start with greeting them with respect. They don't have to earn my respect. I give it to them. I give it to them. And I speak with the confidence to let them know, if you are meaning well or meaning bad by me, God got me covered. I stand in the confidence and the strength that I'm supposed to be in. How dare I be scared of you? How dare I? When I know I got a bigger purpose. God showed me I'm going to be an old man with grandkids before I leave here. So ain't nothing that you go do to me that's going to scare me to get me off that vision that God has showed for my life. So we got to remember that these young people who are hurting, men and women, grown folk too. Let me just add the grown folk in there too that are hurting. That they don't need nobody looking down on them or talking down at them just because you may jump out of a Mercedes or an Audi or whatever. They still want you to treat them like they're a person. And it has to start there. It has to start there.
That's so huge. And I want you guys to understand it. And Derron, you'll see how I kind of do my shows. I always come back and I say, this is what this person said. This is what this person said. So I need you guys to understand Dr. Garrett and Derron both gave very specific things and what we can do to begin to mend this relationship and to begin to make a difference in regards to the perpetrators of the violence in our community, bluntly. First and foremost, Dr. Shirlyn Garrett said something very important. Reach back and bridge the gap. Take personal accountability for reaching back and bridging the gap. Be that through your church, be that you doing Girl Scouts, be that you volunteering somewhere, be that you have a niece or a nephew or a cousin or someone who's closer in the city. Be a specific bridge and bridge that gap. Take personal accountability for doing that. And Derron followed that up with something that was so important. Interact with them normally. And I go back to the initial question that I asked in the first place. How do we interact when we get to the gas station and we're in a part of the neighborhood that we don't quote unquote necessarily want to be in? But we need gas and that sort of thing. Interact with them normally. Don't act any differently. Don't do and be what we so many times accuse white people of doing and being. Don't clutch for your purse. Don't make sure that your doors are super locked. Don't not make eye contact with him because you think he's crazy. Like, seriously, you guys. And I hate to say this because it sounds really rude, but the reality is this is actually what's happening around us. And I have these conversations because I want to have real conversations about what's actually going on. Now, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, y'all sticking with me? Shirlyn, Derron, y'all here? Y'all good?
I'm here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Perfect. Now, when we come back, y'all, I want to touch really quick. And Derron, I think that you're going to be able to touch on this too. You spoke, and while you were speaking, I was thinking, you spoke about in the past and you kind of looking up to the quote unquote doughboys when you were growing up, right? But it brought me to a thought where the gang culture is not now what it was previously. And what a lot of people who are not within the Black community may not understand is that the gang culture used to protect the community. They used to protect the youth. They used to protect the elders. It was not always what it is now. So when we come back, I want to talk about that specific shift. And then I want to go through a few more things that we can do to begin to make the shift. Just more examples like this, bridging the gap, like this, interacting with them. I want to be able to have those conversations. So guys, I'm really hoping that you are enjoying this conversation, listening in and challenging your mindsets. Again, this is Kim Brio. You're listening to Gems and Jams on WSOL New Soul Radio.
Take New Soul Radio with you wherever you go. Download the New Soul Radio app in the Google Play or Apple App Store by searching New Soul Radio. That's NUSOL Radio. If you have what it takes to host your own radio show, hit us up at teamsose.com and drop your info. That's teamsose.com.
SOLSCI. So say. Imagine that this radio spot is about your business.
It's easier than you think.
Text 630-465-5742 to get started. That's 630-465-5742.
WSOL New Soul Radio. This is Kim Brio, and you are listening to Gems and Jams, Life Gems and Feel Good Jams. Of course, it's Thursday, so we have none other than Dr. Shirlyn Garrett in the building. Hey, say hey to the people, Dr. Garrett.
Hey, you guys.
And guys, just in case you have missed it, if you have, I don't know how, you must be living under a rock. Dr. Garrett has a new podcast and a radio show of her own, Dr. Shirlyn Speaks. The radio show is on Friday evenings at 9 o'clock. Is it 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock?
Yes, it's 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock. Friday evenings at 9 o'clock. Can you tell I got too much on my plate? It's Friday evenings at 9 o'clock. And then the podcast is on iHeart, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts after that. Now, today, y'all, we have a special guest in the building, Derron Strickland. Say hey to the people.
Hello, people.
Hey. And again, I'm so happy we got a guy here. I'll be like, yes, it's a man, because all we do is have female conversations.
All the time.
Y'all, we've been having this conversation today that is part 2 of the truth about violence, the conversation that Dr. Garrett and I had. And y'all, we have really been digging in, and y'all, we kind of got to the crux of the issue and started talking about classism within the Black community, right? And we've been really talking about how to interact with people who you don't necessarily quote unquote deem as on your level. And we just keeping it real and calling it what it is. Now, before we went to commercial and played a few songs, I pointed out, and I want Derron, I would love for you to take the mantle with this. I pointed out and I started kind of talking about how gang culture is not necessarily what they would like the masses to think. And that gang culture now is not the gang culture that we grew up with. That there were principles within gang culture that protected the community, that you didn't have to worry about the youth, that you didn't have to worry about the seniors, etc. Can you expound on that a little bit, as far as the differences you've kind of seen in the community from 20, 30 years ago to now?
Man, when I think about growing up on 81st and Marshfield, that was a GD neighborhood. The park, O'Hareland was GD, with Dawes was back on Damon, and Fawcett Park. Everybody know Fawcett Park. You grew up in the city. Over there on the other side of Ashland, between Laughlin and Justine, I should say, but that was the BD part. There were rules. I wasn't a gang member. My mama came outside and told my friends if she see me with my hat twisted to the side and my fingers twisted up, she would kill everybody. So we got to start there first. I had that type of mama. Not to say I didn't have cousins who was in gangs out west, folk on the hustlers, travelers, all that. But the guys that we grew up with, that's just what it was. We all grew up as friends, or it was family members. And so if you tried to get into that life and they knew you was a punk, you wouldn't go get into that life. And I apologize for using that word. I'm sorry to say it that way. If they knew you couldn't handle it.
I was going to say, if they knew that you may not handle that well.
Yes, if you couldn't handle that. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit old school and a little rough around the edges. So to all the listeners, I do apologize. Don't be trying to cancel her show. All right. So if they knew you couldn't handle it, they wouldn't let you do it. They also knew there was people who didn't have families, and they needed that type of support and love. And so they pulled them into it. It was violent. We ain't gonna say it wasn't. It was, but once they were in, they had that protection. And so because when you start talking about that was somebody's grandma, their grandson or the granddaughter, everybody had that family connection inside the gangs. And so the protection was there because of the family member. But I noticed as it changed to all of a sudden, people was chasing that mighty dollar, chasing that power, chasing that territory, that there became cliques inside the same gang where they was fighting each other for the territory. And I remember this growing up over there, that this happened in my own neighborhood where you didn't know who was a friend anymore.
Yeah, the factions began to break down the whole.
Yes. And so when you started talking about that, it was hard to even go outside and say, I lived on Marshfield and just going to Ashland to get on the bus to go to Julian. Just that little short walk was scary, just because you didn't know who was who anymore. You didn't know who was running with that person. And if you wasn't cool with that person, well, you just got jumped on, period, just because you was there.
or because you was just cool with them in general. And now, and you already said, you know, we talked about the fact that the majority of it is your family. So your family could have been into it with somebody you don't even know, but since you they cousin,
automatically get it. And you know, and there was a point that it was just about throwing two hands. You know, people had brass knuckles, they had knives, you know, a few guys had guns, but if you had two hands, you can go home at the end of the day. You may have a black eye, busted lip, but you went out there and you fought the next day. That's how you got your strength. That's how you got your clout. And I remember in the early, I want to say like 94, 95, all of a sudden the guns just took over. And I don't think it was a place like, I'm scared of you, so I got to get rid of you type thing.
That you saying that's what it was?
Yeah, that's what it was to me. Like, I'm scared of you, so I got to get rid of you.
Totally. I just got to eradicate you altogether.
You beat me up one too many times, and I'm tired of taking this butt whooping. So let me just get rid of you, period. And it's sad to say that's what I still see now. Yeah. To a point where we were speaking on during the break earlier about the special ed teacher who just lost her life. They were shooting onto the freeway or
shooting cars, shooting at each other.
Yeah. Or over here on 79th and Cottage. What was that last week? 4 young men, I believe, 2 young men lost their life over here. They just pulled up, started shooting. And it reminded me of that mid-90s culture that drive-bys was just, that's what they were doing. Yeah. So whether it was gang initiation or it was another gang member that they didn't like from the other side, whatever. But that's what I'm starting to see right now, that mid-90s violence come back into play. And it's a little bit worse.
I agree.
Because now the women are doing it too.
Absolutely. And you and I both know that is what we see when we've gone to the prison to volunteer. Yeah. We see the women culture that is there. One of the things that I have to say is I raised the gang member. I finished raising him. And he was something else. And so to get out of this whole culture in the 90s, I had to take him with me to Texas. And so he came to me to Texas, and believe me, he tried me. But he met another me. I wasn't Dr. Garrett then. So he met somebody else, and it worked out well, but it changed his life because he would not be alive if he had not left, if he had not left Chicago. And so I do think that it's worse now. I do think that the violence that we see, it was violent then, but it is so much more violent now. And so it's a whole different kind of place that we're coming from. And I remember even coming to Chicago in the late 90s when I would go knocking on the door to go see kids. If you were walking into the projects or whatever, and it was about to go down, they were like, okay, let me tell you what you're about to do. You need to get in your car right now because this is about to be shut down because they're about to shoot at each other. And you need to get out of here now. Now they wouldn't even care. But they told me this is not a place you need to be right here. You don't need to be here. So get your stuff, pack you up nicely, and roll out.
It's so funny. Yeah, that you guys say that. It's like I'm a little bit younger than you guys. I'm 35. And even growing up in those situations, y'all, even when I was coming up, there used to be basic rules, right? Your likelihood of being in any kind of trouble was lowered if you were not in these certain areas and these certain neighborhoods running with these certain types of people. Now you literally can just exist, especially here in Chicago. There's no like you're safe because you're downtown. You could be downtown in the middle of Magnificent Mile and get the same type of violence that has been historically perpetrated in our minority communities.
Yeah. And I think about what the family unit again. I can't help but to go there because we all had family in Taylor's, Cabrini Greens, Ida B. Wells, the Ickeys, Henry Horner. And so if you had a name like Strickland, my family was in Henry Horner's and the Taylors. So now they'd be like, oh, you so-and-so grandson or great grandson, you so-and-so. You had to get to the house or get to that building real fast or that row house, get there. But now, no, it ain't like that. It ain't like that. They see you. If they want it, they come in. If they want you, they come in for you. And so I just think about what you guys said in your episode before about the breakdown of the family unit. There's no real Medeas anymore. I teased earlier and said grandmas are now 40 years old. They still partying and trying to keep up and wear their daughters' clothes, and it's sad to say that to be accepted, you have to look a certain way or act a certain way or dress a certain way or make this type of money or have this type of job. Because we said it earlier, you can be in those places and those people in that place still mistreat you when you got that job because you just knew. You're the new guy, the new girl. So we need to get back to teaching family, like what that really means to what we say in the frat, from one brother to another, tap double L, like take time to love on people, put yourself there, spend time in your communities, be affectionate, tell people you love them. My son went off to the Navy yesterday and I was in Texas with him and I hugged him like there was no space between us because he's mine. I take claim over my children. He's mine. And I said, I love you, man. Daddy's so proud of you. We don't hear that enough anymore. You know, mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers telling each other they love each other. You know, being patient. We got to realize that we are at different levels and we can't expect people just to be on our level just because that's what we are. Like, it takes time. I mean, if you think about it, God had to take time with you. How dare you try to rush somebody else? When you start talking about that love, and I ain't talking about the phileo, you know, Jonathan and David type friendship, but I'm talking about the agape, altruistic, unselfish,
unconditional.
Like I will lay down, unconditional. Thank you. I will lay down my life for you type love. You know, it's hard for us to do that because we're selfish. We don't forget, and we hurt. We remember.
Yeah.
Right. But then
you touching on another episode. She just did on forgiveness. There you go.
And then talking about, you know, possibly having to lay down your life. That's a true example. I'm a Christian and Baptist by domination. So that true example of what Christ did, I'm going to lay down my life. Father, forgive them for they know not what they do while I'm up here hanging for them. So when you start talking about that thing, we got to get that into our communities. We got to get that in our schools. We got to get that on our job, that we understand that we came from somewhere. And it is our responsibility because these jokers going to be voting for us and our Medicaid and Social Security and all that later. So we got to teach them right. We got to educate them right. We cannot be scared to tell that story that says, guess what? I made mistakes too.
Exactly.
And I think that is so key because even in the classroom, I know that you and I both do that. I made a mistake today. I made a mistake yesterday. Don't put me on a pedestal because I make mistakes every day. I make them in relationships that I have. I make them in every way. Don't put me on a pedestal because I am human. I am just like you. Yeah. And so that's what I think that's important that they hear that because I made mistakes. I do it every day. And I'm not hiding that. This is how I made this. I said, do you think that I didn't take a car when I was growing up? Do you think that I didn't do some of the things that you've done? I may not have done them in the way that you did them, but I've made some mistakes.
Look, why they get caught?
And that's the thing. I didn't.
It wasn't no social media when we was doing it.
And that's what I tell them. There was no social media. I'm looking at things that are showing up on social media, and I was like, thank God there was no social media.
Incriminating yourself.
I'm too old to be incriminated. That stuff happened too long ago. I'm too old for that. So I can tell you that, you know, those are things that happen. I tell my son the same thing. I have a 21-year-old son, and I tell him, you would be surprised at some of the things that your mother did. I'm like, but this is the thing. I learned from it. I had someone talking to me and I had someone praying for me. And so I expect you're going to make mistakes along the way. I forgive you for the mistakes because I know you're going to make them. This is about helping you move to the next level so that you can reach back and help somebody else. And so that's the thing that is continuously a conversation between he and I, because we have to have that conversation. That's the real. But
think about what you're saying. We've had the education, or we had that spiritual upbringing where we saw people who were supposed to be on that pedestal make mistakes. We got a chance to see behind the curtain. I mean, that's what Jesus said in Revelation 3, right? Like if I pull this curtain back and I let these people see you for who you are, we got a chance to see that, and it made us better because we can have that dialogue. As a matter of fact, when I think about it growing up, I didn't get that dialogue. I just saw it. I saw the hypocrisy of it all.
And said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to operate like that.
I think about my children seeing me fail so many times, and I didn't let them walk away with whatever they thought that failure was. I took time to say, I'm sorry, Daddy. Y'all saw that from Daddy, or y'all heard me yell or cuss or whatever it was. You know, people, he would hear me with this minister title and they think that puts me in a different category. No, let me say this right now. I struggle just like everybody else. I make mistakes, and some of my mistakes are out loud in person when people don't even know me. Say, ain't you a minister? And it reminds me that God is watching me. So I got to put that out there first.
Absolutely.
God is always watching, but it gave me a chance to have those conversations with my kids that my mom didn't have with me. period. Like, what is love? What is love to you?
Mm-hmm.
How do you say I'm sorry? Even when you didn't mean it. Sometimes people just need to hear it because it makes them feel better. It's not about you. You did it to them, but you still mad at them for being mad at you. How dare you? But it gives us that conversation. It gives us that conversation place. And so I don't want my kids making my mistakes. And if they do, they got their daddy to come to. They ain't got to run with us.
So stop just 1 second. That was the show that I did last Friday. And it's going to be a continuation on this Friday. Because we talk about forgiveness and we talk about the reality of what forgiveness really looks like. I want to know, and I asked them several questions last week, and I'm like, come on through with these questions, because what is it what can someone do for redemption? What do they have to do for redemption? And so that is the thing that is a difficult question to ask, because I have to ask myself that when I've been hurt, and I mean tremendously hurt.
Yeah,
I mean, the tears were real. I felt a certain way, like you will never speak to me again. And if you are on fire, I'm not going to put it out. So that's how hurt I was. But I have to get to the point of where I'm able to reach out, because that's the thing that I keep telling people. I keep saying that I'm not perfect. And I know that. And so that is my Achilles heel, the thing that I have to work on the most about Shirlyn Maria Garrett. I have to work on forgiveness. And so that is so important that in that moment, I have to do these shows, because I'm not only talking to you, I'm talking to me.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
That's real.
That's real.
That's
but
real.
You know what? Another thing too, let me jump in this and say this, Kim. Men, we got to do better. We got to do better. Even if it hurts or it knocks a little bit of your gold off your shine, or that shine off your gold, we got to do better. We need to learn how to say, I'm sorry. We need to learn how to say, forgive me. We need to learn how, what was that in Planet of the Apes, how the man got down on his knee, bowed his head and put his hand out. And he asked for that forgiveness. He asked for that level of respect to be able to stand up. That doesn't make you less than. It just says that, guess what? You a king. You a king.
And you're accountable for your action.
Yes, you're accountable. So I had to say that right there, because when you start talking about forgiveness, we really do forget, because when we get hurt, it's all about us and we want to feel better. But, God puts us in situations oftentimes of the same every time, just because we haven't learned that lesson yet. And he will keep letting you bump your head until you finally say, God, I am so sorry. I see it now. So that's whether you haven't failed relationships or trouble with your kids or moving forward in your professional life. It's something about you. And it could just be a simple forgiveness piece that you ain't went back to your mother saying, Mom, I'm sorry for this, or baby, I'm sorry for this, or kids, I'm sorry, or even to yourself, because we won't forgive ourselves. We'll beat ourselves up.
Oh, I was just about to say that's almost the worst one.
And we do it often. And so those are the conversations where I'm gonna have someone. I'm gonna have you on my show so we can talk about this.
Come on,
I'm ready to talk about it. I know you're ready to go with the forgiveness piece, because it's major. It's something that's really major and difficult for a lot of us. And forgiving yourself, it is so difficult to forgive.
And yourself. I want you guys who are listening to understand why and how this ties back into the topic, because the reality is, y'all, I don't know any other way to say it. The truth about violence and it being able to change for the better is everyone taking personal accountability within your community. Not saying that it's on them, it's on that activist, it's on that preacher who speaks, it's on that person, it's on the psychologist, it's on the doctors, it's not on everybody else, it's on all of us individually. You should feel a personal accountability and conviction when you see things in your community. When you get to the point where you're looking at the violence and you're in a place of judgment, I want you to switch that judgment to feeling a personal level of accountability and conviction and say, what could I have done for my community at all? What could I have planted in this community? How could I have interacted differently? Because going back to this analogy that we used at the beginning of the show, when you get out of your car, if you tense up when you see that young man sees that. That affects that young man. That affects how he moves in the future. That affects his level or idea of if there is hope.
And I concur with that. I have to say that, again, I said that I raised a Black male, and I raised two of them, and my son has lots. And so and he's a big kid, he's muscular, he's all those things. And when he gets out of the car, that I have seen people tense up. And because they look at the locks and they assume that he is something that he's not. Now, he has the biggest baby face ever, but they assume because he wears locks, because he might be dressed a certain way, that he is something that he's not. And it's hurtful and it's harmful, because if you talk to him, he is the type of young man that's thinking about, what can I do to improve Chicago? Not just me. What can I do for my city? What is it that I need to do to help other people? And that's why he's doing what he's doing. And so he has a whole plan, and I listened to him. His whole thought about what he's doing in his academic career is to go back and to reach back to help somebody else.
And I want to use him as an example, y'all. As she talks about her son, I'm going to place this on you. Imagine a young man being that driven to make a change, but he doesn't make this change because you as the community continue to see him as a certain way. And you continue to put him in a box. And he gets tired of having to fight your situations before he can even get to actually doing the fight for the community. Put yourself in the position, y'all, for real.
Can I jump in on that real
Absolutely.
quick? My first term teaching in Chicago State was January 2020. And everybody know me, I get there super early. Being early is being on time. And I would just sit in the classroom, and people walked in, sit all around me. And they say, when the professor go get here? And when I stood up and I turned around and introduced myself, they was like, stop playing. You ain't the professor. You don't even look like one. And this was my own people doing it to me.
Absolutely.
And I had on a polo shirt, my slacks, nice shoes. You know, the perception of what we believe people are is so amazing to me. I'm 6'2", 280. I'm muscular built. And people tell me, oh, don't you play for the Bears? I could have sworn I saw you on TV. And I said, no, I get paid because I got a brain.
Absolutely.
I get paid because I got a brain. I'm a professor. And the moment I say that, you should see how people look at me. And it blows my mind that to this day, when I left Julian at 17 and I'm now 41, about to turn 42 next month, that I get the same treatment, whether I was a kid on the street or the professional in the classroom. That just because I don't look like what you think a professor should look like, or a facilitator, or when I was in the military, or because I don't look like that, I get that bad treatment. I get it. And matter of fact, I get it when I go to the gas station, just because I get out my car being a black male in my own neighborhood. So,
and so we can talk about that. It ties back to the show that we talked about, again, about plus size and bigger guys and that type of people. So we missed having you on that show, but we're gonna have another one.
I was gonna say we're gonna have to do a part 3.
Yes, because that is, I mean, we could talk so much about all these things and how they're intertwined, but it also goes back to, again, people hurt people.
Right.
And so that's the thing about all of this. It goes back to the intergenerational trauma, which leads back to the hopelessness and the helplessness and all the things that we're facing. People are coming from a hurt place, and if they don't acknowledge it and they don't know how to acknowledge it, this is what we end up with. And so even in having the conversations, having the conversations that we're having, the reality of it is that people are not able to acknowledge what they need to. And that's, again, that we have a personal responsibility to help those people that are our people. We have that personal responsibility. And I think we are the only group that does not do that.
Yes, I will second that motion, and we're going to go to a break really quick. But if there's anything I want you guys to ruminate on as we leave this segment and we go to pay some bills and listen to some music, how can you take personal accountability for the growth of our community? How can you take personal accountability for the growth of our community? Now, we're going to run to some commercial. We're going to run to some songs. But when we come back, y'all, we are going to get to the specific crux of the issue. What we're going to talk about and what I want to have conversations with them about is more ways, we touched on a few, but more ways that we can begin today, right now, making a difference in the community. The reality is, y'all, we do all these talking and a lot of our solutions, y'all, and I want you guys to hear me. A lot of our solutions that we give are about how to build future generations so that we don't damage them, right? But I don't want us to ignore, y'all, the generations that we've already damaged that are standing in the gap. And they're just there. How do we support the area? How do we, first of all, acknowledge that we as a community have enabled parts of our generations. And then what do we do now to begin to fix that? Understanding how we can move in the future so we don't make more generations like this. How do we not ignore them and where they are currently? So y'all, thank you so much for listening. You have been listening to Gems and Jams with Kim Brio, Life Gems and Feel Good Jams on WSOL New Soul Radio. We will be right back.
Hey, you guys, this is Dr. Shirlyn Garrett from Dr. Shirlyn Speaks. I wanted to give you a tidbit of information. If you are in the Chicagoland area and you need counseling, I'm going to provide a resource for you, New Life, New Solutions, and Community Wellness Group. In order to have services, if you have a medical card, you can contact New Life, New Solutions. And if you are a private pay or have private insurance, you can still dial the same number, but it'll be under Community Wellness Group. Our intake coordinator there will be able to help you differentiate which service you would need. You can dial Evelyn Hernandez at 773-308-3362. Again, 773-308-3362. Or Albert Johnson at 773-386-1717. Again, 773-386-1717. That's New Life, New Solutions.
Want more dope content? Check out Sosay's YouTube by searching Sosay on that Sosay Chicago.
WSOL New Soul Radio. You are listening to Gems and Jams with Kim Brio. Thank you so much for tuning in and being here this show. We have been having a dynamic, multifaceted conversation today, honey. Of course, it's Thursday, so you know I have Dr. Shirlyn Garrett here.
Hey guys,
of course. And y'all, we did it again. We got another man. We got more testosterone. We did it again. Yes. Derron Strickland, speak to the people for us.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. So y'all, we have been talking about the truth about violence, part 2, a continuation of the episode that Shirlyn Garrett and I did earlier. And y'all, we have gone in depth and we've really been highlighting, bolding, underlining, italics, personal accountability and what you need to personally do for the growth of our community. Because the reality is, as we sit here and we talk about all of these solutions, we have to take personal accountability. And thus far, the things that we've discussed, Dr. Shirlyn Garrett said it's very important to make sure that we bridge the gap, that we actively reach back, bridge the gap, whether that be through mentorship, whether that be through serving in the community, etc. And Derron said, making sure that even as we interact with those people in our that we don't necessarily deem as our quote unquote cup of tea. And y'all, we went through this whole bourgeois black class conversation. If you missed it, you have to make sure that you go back and listen. But making sure that we interact with them normally. So what I wanted to do for this last portion of the show is give real life examples of what it looks like to have personal accountability and serve to assist in this problem. So, Dr. Garrett, you said you had an example you wanted to share?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I continue to talk about is particular things that I'm doing, things that we're doing as a whole. And one of the things that we continue to do is to mentor young people, not just the young people that are in our program, but outside of the university as a whole as well. And so for me, part of my time is spent mentoring my young people at church who are in the areas that we're speaking of. And so we continue to have and host different events for them. We continue to they have me going to Great America. They have me going to Great America. I could just say that.
Girl, have fun. I ain't gonna go with you, but have fun.
I don't want to go, but I'm going for them. And anybody that knows me, like Great America, yes. So I'm going for them to show them. You know, some of the things that are so important are just the small amount of time that you spend or you invest with them. Listening to them is something that is key. I don't take the conversations that we have lightly. So when things are done, people look And those kids are flocking to me. I'm the person that gives them and is continuously instilling discipline, and they still come to me. And the parents are looking like, how you get them to talk to you? I listen. And I think that is key, because whenever we have a conversation, and it's an exchange of information. And I think that is important. I'm not judgmental. I listen to what they have to say, and it pulls them in. Tell me about how your week was. What are you doing? Oh, how was this? How was that? It's important for them to hear that they have somebody that is older than they are, that actually cares about what it is that they're doing, how they are, what's going on with them, what is it that they want to do, and I still connect them to someone else. So because I'm not in their age range, I'm actually probably their parents' age or a little bit older. I'll talk to them, but also connect them to someone that's a little bit around their time for their age range, and they can contact them and talk as well. But they feel connected to me, and that's what's important to me, because I'm making the gap, bridging the gap that we keep talking about by being available to them, being non-judgmental of them, and listening to what they have to say. Now, moving forward from me to Derron does some very important work. And he talked a little bit about it, but he has some things and some tools that he could share with you guys, because he's also doing it in a different manner, and working with some kids that have had some difficulties, and they are part of the system that that they're a part of in child welfare. And so I'm gonna turn it over to Derron and let him talk about the work that he's doing.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Garrett. I don't take for granted anything that I've been assigned to do, and I try to make sure that as I'm working with these young people, whether it's through DCFS or at the university, because just because they're there, don't mean they just in a better position. They just got another opportunity, or they're taking an opportunity that somebody else didn't have. And thinking about when I started mentoring in 2009, I think about Andre, Chris, Danny, Jamal, all these guys, Rob, Adam, who allow me to come into their lives. Their mothers allow me to come in their lives and try to be that social father, be that example. Everyone knows I always talk about how we learn things. So it's a foundation. A foundation means the basis and groundwork of anything. So I always talk about communication, trust, loyalty, and respect. I don't care what type of relationship you have, whether it's friends, it's intimate or professional, those 4 words exist. And that'd be something later out of Dia's foundations, the whole foundations piece. But the thing I talked about earlier is the respect piece. The word respect means to hold to a high esteem or regard, which means really accepting somebody for who they are. They don't have to look like me. They don't have to have what I have. I just got to accept them for right where they are, which means meet them where they are. Don't talk above them. Don't talk down to them, but just meet them where they are. Because most people, all they want you to do is just listen to them. Just close your big old mouth and just listen. The second thing, healthy communication. We know that communication is both listening and speaking, but when you speak, make sure you're speaking being open, effective, and precise, which means open. Are you afraid to say what's on your mind? We give people too much power over our lives and too much respect. When we have a voice, and we will often silence ourselves because of who that person is in front of us. No, go ahead and speak openly those things, because we always say, man, I wish I would have said that, or they don't know this about me. Well, you never put it out there. You're not being open enough. Precise says, are you saying what you mean to say? Oftentimes, men, we get caught up in arguments where we say one thing, but we mean another, and then we're reminded of that thing. So when you have that platform, say the things that need to be expressed to these young people. The last thing, as far as being effective says, are you getting the result that you're looking for with what you are saying? So if somebody is taking what you're saying out of context, take a step back and think about what you said to them. All right. I give a quick example of my daughter. She came for a summer to be with me, and I said, Jay, go do the dishes. And she came back like 30 seconds later. It's like, Daddy, I'm done. I was like, how? And then I had the dishwasher go off. I grew up with a tub, basin, sink, which means you had some elbow grease, hot water, and a towel, not a dishwasher. And to this day, I won't even use a dishwasher. I still hand wash dishes. Me meaning to tell my daughter to hand wash dishes, she did what she knew how to do, put them in the dishwasher. So being effective says, make sure that you're saying the things to get the result that you're looking for when you're dealing with these people. Structure. I have to go here for a minute. And I'm going to put 2 different concepts out there when it comes to structure. Perception being reality and real versus truth. So be who you want people to see you as, because perception is reality. We talk about impressions being the first thing, and that's what people remember. Well, I'm going to be exactly who I am all the time. Whether you like it or not, this is who I am. You can think because I'm 6'2", 280, I'm a football player, but no, you go learn to see that this man speaks with intelligence because I am a king. And that's what you go see in me, because that's how I'm going to treat you. I'm going to treat you like the queen that you are, or the king that you are, never taken for granted. And then the real versus truth part of it, real is about perceived experiences. So just because you went through it, it doesn't mean other people did. Or some people go through the same experience you have and they walk away with something different because they got a glass half full approach where you got a glass half empty approach. So being who you want them to see, that structure, you have to do that. If you want people to be successful, show them what success looks like. It's not always about money, but often what Shirlyn already said, and that's reaching back to bring up people so they can see more of us up here doing it all together. Make sure that you also, and Kim said this already, Dr. Garrett said it, the accountability piece. Make people accountable. You don't have to fight with somebody. You don't have to disagree and argue and fight. You can say, brother or sister, hey, man, this is what I perceive that thing to be. And give them a chance to clean that joke up. Because once they see that you're not trying to beat them up, make them feel worse than what they already feel about their stuff, they're more likely to come to you with that same piece, admit that they was wrong, and then be accountable. And then teach somebody else. You got to think about it. What I just said about being who you want them to see, you have to teach them to be who they want people to see. So if you go be a thug, acting all crazy, that's what I'm going to believe about you. But if you want me to see you as the intelligent black man, black woman, whatever race you are, it don't matter. Show me that thing. Because if I assume, it's not just my fault. It's also what you put out there. And so those are the things that I put out there. I try to keep in my mind as I'm working with those when I'm out there, and then trying to really just give them this thing. Like, you don't want this world to be something that you don't want to live in. And you help create this issue. You cannot complain about the spilled milk when you the one kicked over the bowl because you wasn't paying attention. You walking around this world with a blindfold on versus eyes wide open and seeing it and being okay with what the Bible says, standing in the gap, being present and being okay that it may not go the way you want it to go, but at least you're planting a seed. All right. So that's what I got for y'all.
That was a mouthful, honey. But that is exactly what we needed, because what I wanted to do, and we've had this intense conversation, multifaceted conversation today, but you tied it together perfectly, because what I wanted to do was leave people with actionable things that they could do, that they can feel that they are, number one, making a difference, and number two, where all of these small acts add up to a larger impact. Dr. Garrett, did you have a response?
No, I was going to say exactly what you said. He delivered. And so I'm hoping that you guys hear the things that we both shared with you. And again, about the accountability, personal accountability. And hopefully that'll move the needle a little bit and even more in our community, which is important to both of us, all three of us, actually.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So guys, first of all, Derron, thank you so much for being here. Now, listen, not to call you out, but you ain't got no social media. So how do we tell people how to find you?
You can just email me, really.
Well, go ahead and get your email.
You can email me at strickland.dtj@gmail.com. The website's out there. We got to get that updated for everybody. But right now, if you're trying to reach me, you can reach me at Strickland, STRICKLAND.DTJ@gmail.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So you guys, that is, of course, how you can get in touch with Derron. Now, of course, you already know how you can get in touch with Shirlyn. Dr. Shirlyn will be here every single Thursday. And you can also email her now at her new email address, drsherlynspeaks@gmail.com. That's SHIRLYN. Dr. Garrett, you want to tease them about your show tomorrow or anything like that?
Yes, so you guys know that we talked about forgiveness, and Dr. Garrett is not the only person that has issues with forgiveness. And I ask you to come prepared to talk about what can anyone do when they mess up big time? And what is it that we're going to do? What can they do to get redemption? Is there redemption after they failed and you can't forgive them? What can they do to get it? So let's come back tomorrow night, and we're going to hear maybe some things that you've left on my voicemail, if there's some things out there, and we'll talk about it See you at 9.
I know y'all heard that awkward silence. Listen, if you guys have not heard her episode on forgiveness, I encourage you to go and do that. It is currently on iHeart, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and you will definitely leave feeling. I will definitely say you will leave thinking, because that question that she just asked, y'all, I'm still trying to grow, because I know that this is not where I'm supposed to be. But at this point, it ain't nothing they could do. It ain't nothing. It ain't nothing. It ain't no money. It ain't no gifts. It ain't no prayers from the Lord. Jesus, the Messiah, could come down and be like, but Kim. And I'm gonna be like, but Jesus, I rock with you, but not them. Like, I don't know, Dr. Garrett, you're gonna have to work with me on this show. So I'm gonna be tuned in, because forgiveness is a journey. Forgiveness is a journey. Now, y'all, next show, I'm going to have Michelle Amiibo on. Michelle has survived heart disease, and she has been very vocal about it and about her journey. And we're going to speak to Michelle about that on next Tuesday's show. Of course, you do know tomorrow's show with Dr. Garrett comes on tomorrow at 9:00. And then, of course, our new addition to the New Soul family this coming Monday, Pharaoh the Wordsmith's second show, Soul Cymatics, will be on this coming Monday from 10 to midnight ish, because y'all, Pharaoh likes to talk. So last time it went till 1:00. So we just gonna say it starts at 10 and it ends when he's done. So shout out to Pharaoh. Make sure you are listening. And very shortly, you guys, Pharaoh's show will also be a podcast and be available. It is currently on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, hopefully iHeart soon. So make sure you check that out, guys. And if you have not, be sure to download the app. If you're not listening to this show on the app, or you're listening to it on a podcast, make sure that you download the New Soul Radio app. You can do that at newsoulradio.com. That's NUSOL radio.com/app. APP. So that's newsoulradio.com/app. Thank you so much for listening to today's show, guys. I will be back next Tuesday, and we'll see you soon.
Suffering in silence doesn't have to be your reality. Intimate partner violence accounts for 15% of all violent crime. But you can get out. The Slip Out app was designed to give victims and survivors of domestic violence useful yet practical tips, advice, and information on how to leave, how to heal, and how to prevent future abuse. Download the Slip Out app for free on Google Play or the Apple App Store. There is a way out.
Unlike other health concerns, mental illness is not always easy to see. Depression won't show up on an eye chart, and you won't find PTSD by looking at a thermometer. Sorting out a mental health concern takes professional diagnosis and treatment. Anxiety won't just go away under a bandage. If you or a loved one has a mental health concern, call 1-800-662-HELP for free and confidential information and treatment referral. Learn more at samhsa.gov/support.
Starting a business? Grab Kim Brio's free brand identity checklist to remove the chaos around DIY in your brand. Get it free at kimbrio.com/checklist. That's Kim Brio. BRIO.com/checklist.
This is an American Red Cross blood donation alert. The Red Cross is facing a severe blood shortage and is urging eligible donors of all types to give now and help avoid delays in life-saving medical care for patients this summer. More donations are needed to replenish the blood supply and help address the extraordinary blood needs of hospitals and patients right now. Be a hero to a patient in need. Use the Blood Donor app. Visit redcrossblood.org or call 1-800-RED-CROSS to make an appointment to help save lives.
This podcast contains excerpts from New Soul Radio shows. For the full listening experience with music, visit newsoulradio.com. That's NUSOL radio.com.